Hello and welcome to Module 4. In this module, you will have an opportunity to practice. You will see a couple of live demonstrations on what we've learned so far. In this demonstration, you will get an opportunity to see exactly how a software tester execute a manual test case. So the test cases here on the left were the test cases that we created earlier. So now we are going to test the Cyclo's new user login registration. And so what a tester would do is actually take the manual test case that was created here with Excel, and they would just go through each step and execute the steps. They would enter the information in as they see it here on the test case. So right here on the right, I am following the steps and entering the data from the test case into these fields here in the Cyclos application. If you're working for a company, and some companies have automated tools that you can use to create test cases. But here we have this manual test case that was created in Excel, and so just scrolling through and following the steps. And we go down a little bit further, and we're almost done with this test case right here. We're just, again, entering in all of the required information. We are checking the appropriate boxes based upon the steps in the test case. And in a second here, we will click the submit button. And thank you for registering, which is what the test case stated that it should do. And we will move on to the second step, the next step, where we would actually log in to our email address and make sure that that validation email appears, which it does here in this example. So we're on this step right here. And we click on this link, and the user is taken to the Cyclos login screen, and it states that the account has been activated. And we'll see one more step here. And now that person, the tester, would sign in using that new user login name and password. So they will put in that login name that they created. And so in this case, it was Nocella2017 along with that password, and sign in. So that's basically what a tester does. They take their test cases, they create it after reviewing the requirements, and here they would go back, and each step that passed or failed, you could do it after each step, or you can, after everything is done, you can go back and just put P or spell out the word pass for each step that passed, which is what I'm doing here in this case. All of those steps pass, so that particular scenario, it passed. We have the other test case here where we can execute those tests, execute those steps here. So it's the same thing as I mentioned earlier. A software tester, they create test scenarios and test cases after reviewing the test cases. After the test cases have been completed, they take that test case and then execute it and test that new system out. Any issues that are found during that time, they create a defect and report those problems to their lead. Their lead then will assign that defect over to the development team to fix it later. So that concludes test execution. Thank you so much. In this demonstration, you would have an opportunity to see how to create a defect using a defect tracking tool. So here, what I'm doing is just logging in, and a test manager or test lead would create a project, a test project for that particular application. So if you recall, the name of the application that we're working on is Cyclones. So what I'm doing here is creating a new project in this defect tracking tool. It's a demo here called Redmine Demo. And so if you like, you can access it yourself just by going to demo.redmine.org and just play around with it. So again, here I am just creating a project, the Cyclones demo project. So I've put in the Cyclones demo name along with a brief description of the project itself. The modules are already pre-selected, so I will keep them. And the trackers, we're tracking bugs, features, and support. And so I'll just hit create and continue. And so my project was successfully created. So now we're set up and we're ready to create defects. So I am going to actually go back here and find the project. So we have Cyclones Demo, that's the name of the project. As you can see here, my name is there, Allison Whitley Tyhamble. I am the manager. I'm going to click on the New Issue tab, and we're going to pretend that we found a defect during our test execution, just so you can see an example of how to create a defect. So the subject line, we'll just write a brief description on the error message. So I put error message did not appear, or something of that nature. Error message was incorrect. So again, just a brief description of the error message you receive. In the description text box below, you have a lot more landscape to enter additional information. So here I'm going to just add some more information about the error message that I received. And another thing too, and you will see this in a second, a tester will also enter the steps to reproduce the error message. This is very important to put the steps to reproduce the error message. So when a tester is reporting these issues to a developer will know exactly where, at what point that error message occurred. So this assists them greatly with their troubleshooting and debugging when they're trying to fix the problem. So in a second, you'll get a chance to see just some of what I just spoke about, putting the steps to reproduce. So the more information you provide in the defect tracking tool, it just assists the developer greatly in finding the root cause of the problem. So here is step to reproduce. And also, if you are using you can also maybe copy the steps from the actual test case into this field. Sometimes it's quicker and easier to just copy the steps instead of typing everything yourself. But we'll just take a few more seconds here so you can see exactly what happened or what I did, and that was just entering all of the steps. And as I'm doing that, as I'm writing the steps here, let's go over just some of the fields that you learned earlier about the components of a defect We see the status, the priorities, which we discussed earlier, assignee who is you're assigning this defect to. Also, we have, you'll have an opportunity to insert a screenshot if necessary. So just a few seconds longer. We have the start date, the estimated time. Sometime a developer will put in the estimated time they think it will take to fix the problem. So again, the more information you provide to the developer, the easier it makes their job easier. And so here, what you saw a second is that I went over to the test case itself and copied some information from there. So just a few more seconds here of entering the steps to reproduce. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a lot easier to just copy the steps. But this is basically how you create a defect. Should take a few more seconds here once we're done. And I'm scrolling down over here to copy some information from the test case and put that information into the in the defect itself. And the developer will, as I mentioned earlier, that person will look at these steps, execute these steps, and see if they're able to reproduce the problem. And they can go behind the scenes and go to the code and see exactly what's wrong and why there's a problem. So again, it's vital to put as much information as possible in these defect tracking reports. Should be done in a second. And so the problem is the incorrect error message appeared. So that was the problem. So it was an error handling issue. And you scroll down here. And so what I'm doing here is attaching an actual screenshot of the error message. So not only do I have my steps to reproduce, I have proof that this problem did occur. So the developer has everything that they need. And so I'm going to change the priority. So this is urgent. I need to have this problem fixed right away because it's preventing me from moving forward or from this test case passing. And so what it did was create a defect number. And so since that test case failed, I will go to the test case, and at that step where it actually failed, I will put fail and put that defect number. And so when someone else is trying to, or when someone else have to execute this test case, they will see that at that step, it failed. In that test case, itself failed. And we have a defect number. So that concludes how to create a defect using a defect tracking tool.